Um, Usually when we think about our health, there's this underlying expectation of control.
Right, like we're firmly sitting at the steering wheel.
Exactly. We treat our bodies like these high-end machines. You put premium fuel in, you get good performance out. I mean, you decide what you eat, right?
Yeah, you decide if you want to drink or, if you're going to actually try to get 8 hours of sleep tonight.
Right. It feels like we are completely in charge of our own biology.
But it's a very comforting illusion. We absolutely love to believe that as long as we make the right choices, we can just optimize our physical operating system indefinitely.
Right. But then you step into the reality of respiratory biology, and suddenly that steering wheel it's just gone. We're looking at a biological landscape that is entirely out of our control.
It's the absolute definition of an inescapable flaw in the human design.
And welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at exactly that, a biological limitation that literally caps human lifespan.
Which is our complete inability to filter the air we breathe.
Exactly. And we're also dissecting this radical piece of engineering called the ToxBox, which was actually designed to fix this flaw.
Yeah, we're pulling from excerpts from Fuchi Wu's Master's Insight 0022 and the technical design principles of this device, officially called the Air 80 Maze Purifier, though ToxBox is a lot catchier.
Much catchier. So our mission today is to explore how this device uses these physical mazes and intense electrical fields to permanently intercept microscopic threats before they ever enter your lungs.
And it all starts with this really provocative concept from the text. If you look at human biology, we possess a fundamental inborn lifespan defect.
Right.
And it's not a genetic disease. It's not, a failing organ that just gives out when you hit 80.
No, it's this simple, inescapable reality. From your very first breath as a newborn to your absolute last, you cannot stop breathing.
Right.
But crucially, you cannot selectively choose to breathe only harmless air.
Think about breathing not just as a bodily function, but in the realm of exposure science as this wide open door.
Right, like an intake valve that's permanently stuck open.
Exactly. Contrast inhalation exposure with ingestion exposure, like what we eat, or dermal exposure, what actually touches our skin.
If you don't like a certain food or if you know it's toxic, you don't eat it.
Right. If you don't want to smoke, you don't light up. Even if you completely skip meals for a few days, you're not going to immediately drop dead. You have a buffer.
But breathing has absolutely no off switch. You sleep, you breathe. You work, you breathe.
You're sick, you're 90 years old, you're a newborn baby, you have to breathe.
You can't just look at a cubic meter of air and say, okay, oxygen and nitrogen, come on in.
Yeah.
Dust, smoke, heavy metals, microplastics, you guys stay out.
We just don't have a biological filter at the intake valve.
We simply inhale the reality of the air around us, whatever that happens to be on any given day.
And that leads to a really critical scientific concept we need to understand, which is cumulative exposure. We aren't just talking about walking into a burning building once.
Right, this is 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for your entire life.
Yeah. There's a fascinating thought experiment that really isolates how crazy our current baseline is.
Oh, the baby analogy. I love this one. Let's lay this out for you guys listening. Imagine a baby is born, and every single day, someone feeds that baby a tiny fixed amount of actual literal poison.
Just a little bit, not a lethal acute dose.
Right. But every single day.
Yeah.
Consistently. Year after year, 10 years, 20 years. We don't need to wait until that kid is 80 years old to know that this is going to end in some sort of systemic health failure.
Right. It's just basic cause and effect. And it perfectly illustrates the true nature of the dose-response relationship in toxicology.
Because usually when people hear dose, they think of like acute poisoning, right?
Exactly. Like how much cyanide did you ingest at one time? But continuous long-term exposure is entirely different.
It's a completely different ballgame.
The danger is actually a product of the concentration of the toxin, how many hours a day you're exposed to it, the frequency, and how many continuous years this barrage goes on.
Now, I know what you're probably thinking, because I was thinking the exact same thing when we were prepping for this. Doesn't the human body have built-in defenses for this?
I mean, we have lungs lined with mucus.
Right, we have a liver, we have kidneys, we have this incredibly complex, highly evolved immune system. Aren't we literally designed to handle this stuff?
Well, the human body does have physiological mechanisms to handle foreign substances. In toxicology, it's referred to as the ADME process.
ADME. Okay, let's break that down. What does that stand for?
It stands for absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. But we really have to understand what that actually means on a cellular level.
Okay, so what is the body actually doing during those steps?
When you inhale a microscopic toxin, say a volatile organic compound or a heavy metal particle, it enters your lungs and crosses the blood barrier. That's absorption.
Got it. And then distribution.
Then your blood carries it to every organ in your body. That's distribution. Now your liver has to step in.
Right. The liver is the filter.
Exactly. It sees this toxic molecule and furiously tries to alter its chemical structure, usually trying to make a fat-soluble toxin water-soluble so we can get rid of it. That's metabolism.
And then excretion is just getting it out of the body.
Right. Finally, your kidneys filter that altered molecule out into your urine. That's excretion.
Honestly, just hearing all those steps, that sounds exhausting.
That is exactly the point. The human body is not an infinite processor.
Right. It's not a bottomless trash can where you throw things away and they magically disappear.
No. Every single step of that ADME process requires your cells to expend biological energy. It burns ATP. It creates oxidative stress.
So whatever can be excreted is excreted, and whatever can be repaired is repaired, but...
The capacity to do this isn't infinite.
Wait, so if that toxic load never stops entering the body, because, we never stop breathing, then those processing centers never get a break.
Precisely. The continuous influx of pollutants creates this endless, exhausting workload.
So the organs just start to wear down.
Eventually, the liver, the kidneys, the immune system, they get overwhelmed. The backlog of toxins leads to cellular damage, which triggers chronic low-grade systemic inflammation.
And chronic inflammation is basically the precursor to almost every major age-related disease we know of.
Exactly.
So if our bodies are constantly burning through our biological energy reserves just to fight off the air we breathe every second of every day, what does that actually mean for how long and how well we live?
It really forces us to look at the crucial difference between health span and lifespan.
Okay, lay that out for us.
Lifespan is simply the total time a person is alive, the ticking clock.
Right, the number on the tombstone.
Yes. Health span, on the other hand, is the period of life spent in optimal health, maintaining your physical vitality and your cognitive functions.
So the goal of recognizing this lifespan defect isn't to create some magical fountain of youth that makes a 70-year-old wake up as a 20-year-old.
No, time doesn't run backward. What this is about is the reduction of inhalation exposure.
Meaning, if you stop the continuous microscopic damage before it even enters the body, you delay that bodily decay.
Exactly. You extend the health span, you push the inevitable physical decline further and further back into your late life.
There's a glaring blind spot in how we understand human longevity when you look at it through this lens. I mean, think about all the mountains of historical data we have.
Oh, absolutely. We track average life expectancy across different countries, the genetic differences between men and women.
We look at the historical records of supercentenarians. But here's the catch. Every single piece of historical and current data we have on human lifespan is based on humans who have lived under the constant, unrelenting burden of environmental exposure.
Right. We literally do not know what the true biological limit of the human body is.
Wait, really? We don't have any baseline?
We don't. We only know how long a human can survive while simultaneously acting as a biological air filter.
That is wild to think about.
It really is. If that lifelong toxic burden were completely removed from day one, or, even before birth, how long could the human body actually sustain itself?
What is our actual baseline? We just have no idea.
None at all.
Think about an ant. Let's say an ant in a pristine environment normally lives for 5 days. But on day 2, someone sprays it with an aerosol insecticide and it dies immediately.
Right.
You wouldn't look at that ant and conclude its natural lifespan was 2 days. Its life wasn't finished. It was artificially terminated by poison.
It's a stark comparison, but it's biologically accurate.
It makes you wonder, is humanity currently living like that ant? Are we hitting our 70s or 80s, our joints are aching, our energy is depleted, and we're just thinking, well, that's just the natural limit of the human machine?
When in reality, our bodies are just finally succumbing to 70 years of microscopic bug spray.
Exactly.
It really shifts the entire paradigm of preventative medicine. Why wait until the toxins are deeply embedded in your lung tissue?
Why wait for the immune system to mount an exhausting inflammatory response?
Exactly. Why wait for the cellular damage to manifest as a disease and then try to treat the symptoms of that disease with pharmaceuticals?
The most logical, elegant engineering solution is just to intercept the threat outside the body entirely.
Which is much easier said than done.
Right. If the goal is to stop the poisoning before it starts, how do you physically catch microscopic threats that you can't even see? We're talking about things significantly smaller than the width of a human hair.
And this is where we transition into the actual mechanics of the ToxBox, or the Air 80 maze purifier.
So how does it actually work?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't use standard filters, right?
Right. To intercept these microscopic threats, the engineers had to completely abandon traditional filtration methods. There are no standard paper filters or HEPA filters doing the heavy lifting here.
Wait, if there are no filters, how does it physically trap anything? Doesn't the air just blow right through it?
Well, traditional filters have a fatal flaw. They rely on tiny pores to catch things.
Like a net.
Exactly. But as those pores fill up with dust and particles, the filter clogs. Airflow drops massively, and the air just finds the path of least resistance, usually around the edges of the filter.
So it basically stops working.
Yeah. The ToxBox bypasses this entirely by using a static dust collection maze box. It relies on physical interception and intense electrostatic forces.
Okay, let's visualize this. Picture a high-speed car chase. You've got all these vehicles representing the dust, the microplastics, the allergens, the heavy metals, and they're racing down a massive straight highway.
Right.
Now imagine you force that entire high-speed chase off the highway and into a tiny alleyway. But this alleyway isn't straight. It is filled with over 60 sharp, zigzagging hairpin turns and incredibly narrow choke points.
That illustrates exactly what the engineering principles call multiple forced impaction.
Multiple forced impaction, okay.
When the air is pulled into the ToxBox, it's traveling at high speed. The air itself is a fluid, so it can bend and weave through that complex maze without much issue.
But the particles suspended in the air have mass.
And mass means inertia.
Exactly.
As the air is forced to navigate this incredibly complex maze, the physics of inertia basically take over.
So the larger particles, the heavier cars, in our car chase analogy, like heavy dust or pollen, they simply cannot make those 60 sharp turns at that speed.
No, they deviate from the airflow's path and just slam directly into the physical walls of the maze.
Like just crash out of the air straight.
Exactly.
But what about the smaller stuff? A heavy car crashes on a hairpin turn, sure. But what about, like, a microscopic motorcycle? The ultrafine particles that normally slip right through the pores of HEPA filter.
They don't escape either. Because the maze is so tight, with continuous sharp turns and hole crossings, even the ultrafine particles are forced into extreme close proximity to the maze walls.
Okay.
And that's where the electrostatic forces kick in, which we'll detail in just a second. Those forces essentially grab the ultrafine particles and violently drag them out of the airflow, locking them against the walls.
So the sheer number of mandatory impacts means nothing gets a straight shot through.
Right. Every microsecond, billions of ultrafine particles and aerosols are forced into this physical gauntlet.
And because of the mathematical certainty of multiple forced impaction over 60 turns, it achieves a 100% purification rate in a single pass.
Exactly. There is no physical escape route for particulate matter. Once it enters the ToxBox, it is physically locked onto the walls.
Okay, I have to push back here, though. I understand how crashing works for a physical particle.
Right.
If you're a piece of pollen or microplastic, hitting a wall and sticking to it stops you. But what about the invisible chemical threats?
Like gases.
Yeah, what about volatile organic compounds or VOCs like formaldehyde outgassing from new furniture? Or airborne viruses? A chemical gas doesn't just crash like a physical object. How does this physical maze deal with things that aren't solid?
That is where the second core technology comes into play, and honestly, it's what makes the system so radical.
Okay, lay it on us.
It is not just a physical maze, it is simultaneously an intense electrical field. Before the air even enters that zigzagging physical maze, it passes through a dual negative ionization zone.
So it's zapping the air before it enters the maze.
It's doing a lot more than just zapping. It's actively altering the electrical charge of the molecules.
Oh, wow.
First, this intense burst of negative ions physically ruptures and neutralizes pathogens like bacteria and viruses.
Okay.
But more importantly for the chemical gases, it blasts all the ultrafine particles, aerosols, and even toxic gas molecules with electrons. This gives every single microscopic threat entering the machine a highly negative electrical charge.
Okay, so the air and everything in it gets flooded with negative electrons.
Right.
Then it goes into the maze.
Right. And remember those physical walls in the maze where everything is crashing?
Yeah.
Those walls are heavily positively charged plates.
Ah, positive pulls negative.
Exactly. So when these negatively charged chemical aerosols and volatile gases enter the maze, it's not just inertia throwing them against the wall.
It's an unbreakable electrostatic attraction.
Yes. The positively charged walls act like high-powered magnets for the negatively charged toxins.
So the text described this almost like microelectroplating, right?
Yes, that's exactly what's happening on a microscopic level.
Yeah.
Imagine toxic chemicals dissolved in tiny microscopic moisture droplets in the air.
Okay.
As those droplets are pulled against these positive plates, the high-speed airflow dries out the moisture. Whatever toxic chemical was inside is now essentially plated onto the positive electrodes, completely locked in place.
Wait, if you just keep electroplating toxins onto a metal plate, doesn't the wall eventually just fill up?
You'd think so.
Doesn't the machine just become like a solid brick of highly concentrated toxic sludge? Because traditional purifiers use activated carbon to soak up chemical gases. And those basically act like sponges.
Right.
Eventually, when the sponge gets completely full, you have to throw the filter away. Or worse, if the room gets warm, the sponge starts releasing those toxins back into the air you breathe.
And this is where the ToxBox fundamentally outsmarts activated carbon. As you said, activated carbon is just a storage facility. It holds the toxins until it's full.
Right.
The ToxBox doesn't just hold the chemical toxins, it actively destroys them.
Wait, so electrochemical oxidation,
Mhm.
is that essentially like putting these molecules in an invisible electric blender? You're just tearing the chemical bonds apart without a spark?
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it.
Yeah.
It is an invisible electric blender. These highly charged metal plates are sitting in an intense electric field.
Okay.
When volatile organic compounds like formaldehyde, which is a carbon-based molecule, are trapped on these plates, the sheer intensity of the electrical environment triggers a molecular-level electrochemical oxidation.
So it's literally ripping the molecule to shreds.
Yes. The intense electric field and the constant exchange of electrons continuously break the carbon-hydrogen and carbon-oxygen bonds of the organic toxin.
It oxidizes them.
It is quite literally molecular deconstruction. Over time, a highly toxic chemical like formaldehyde is entirely dismantled and converted into completely harmless end products.
Which are carbon dioxide and water, right?
Exactly. CO2 and H2O.
That is incredible. It literally turns poison into water vapor. And the exact same carbon dioxide we exhale normally.
Precisely. And because it's actively destroying the pollutants rather than just storing them in a sponge, the filter essentially self-purifies.
So this prevents the saturation problem I mentioned with traditional filters.
Right. It's what the engineering specs call the progressive saturation long-life adsorption design.
Honestly, it sounds exactly like a continuous self-cleaning oven.
A self-cleaning oven is the perfect analogy.
Right, because the machine has multiple deep sections of these mazes. The front part of the maze takes the initial hit. It starts trapping the heavy dust and the immediate chemical gases.
But as that front section gets incredibly busy, the particles that slip slightly past get caught by the next section of the maze, and the next.
Because those deeper sections are fresh, they keep the overall purification rate at 100%.
Exactly.
And while the back is working hard trapping new things, that front section is acting like this self-cleaning oven. It's actively using the electric field to chemically incinerate and dismantle what it already caught, converting it to water vapor and freeing up space on the plates all over again.
It creates a highly sustainable, long-term operational model. It doesn't just choke and die after a month of heavy use like a HEPA filter.
It adapts, it self-cleans, and it continuously neutralizes the threat without losing airflow.
So when you put it all together, what is the ultimate output of all this intense physics and chemistry?
You've got this physical gauntlet forcing mandatory crashes. You've got this intense electric field electroplating particles to the walls. And you've got this invisible electric blender molecularly deconstructing the chemical gases.
The result is what the engineers call Heaven Air Plus.
Super heaven air quality. I'll be honest. It sounds a bit sci-fi or like marketing jargon, but they actually back it up with a very specific measurable metric. They call it achieving the 8 zeros.
Right. It achieves zero dust, zero bacteria, zero toxins, zero smoke.
0 odors, 0 heavy metals, 0 microplastics, and 0 harmful aerosols.
It is the complete and total sterilization of your respiratory intake.
And this brings us back to the sheer scale of what this invention represents. We started this deep dive talking about this massive, lifelong, inescapable human flaw.
The fact that from the second we are born to the second we die, we are forced to inhale an environment that is actively degrading our biology.
Exhausting our livers
Yeah.
and causing chronic cellular inflammation. It is a global crisis that affects every single human being on Earth.
It's basically an environmental tax that directly diminishes the lifespan and health span of the entire species.
Exactly. But the true paradigm shift here is that this massive biological failing isn't solved by some multi-billion-dollar medical procedure. It's not solved by futuristic genetic engineering.
You solve the biological defect by simply turning on a machine in your environment. You transform a biological crisis into a simple daily utility.
The economics of this are fascinating, too. The scale of the problem is a human lifetime. The scope of the problem is every living human.
But the cost of the solution is just a tiny daily expense for the electricity to run the device.
When you reframe air purification, not as a luxury appliance for making a living room smell a little fresher, but as a mandatory biological defense mechanism,
A literal lifespan shackle unlocker.
the adoption of this technology becomes a fundamental human necessity. There's a question posed in the research. Since I can handle it, why wouldn't I handle it?
If you possess the technology to stop poisoning yourself, why would you continue to do so?
And it leaves you with a really profound, almost provocative final thought to mull over.
It brings us right back to the concept of biological energy and the ADME process we talked about earlier.
Yes. Think about what we mapped out. Your immune system, your liver, your kidneys, your cellular metabolism, they currently spend a massive, uncountable percentage of their daily energy acting as walking air filters.
They are fighting an exhausting, lifelong, invisible war against environmental toxins.
A war they never signed up for, and one they eventually lose.
A war they never signed up for.
So imagine a world where technology like the ToxBox is universally adopted in our homes, our schools, our offices. Imagine your body is finally completely relieved of that 70-year war.
The air you breathe is just pure oxygen and nitrogen, the 8 zeros.
If we stop forcing our organs to act as biological trash compactors, what dormant physical, cognitive, or evolutionary potentials might the human body unlock with all that newly freed up biological energy? If we aren't spending our entire lives just surviving our environment, what could we actually become?